Episode 8 of Ranking of Kings definitely answered a lot of questions for us, especially regarding King Bosse. Unfortunately, at the same time, creating a lot of question marks for me, just exactly what direction this plans on going from this point, but this is my thoughts on episode 8 of Ranking of Kings, so let's jump into it. A majority of this episode follows King Bosse as we see the point in which he is trying to seek strength. He is currently with Miranjo, and Miranjo takes him to a demon, which we kind of seen at his death, and he asks this demon for strength, some way of getting stronger, and it has Miranjo kind of translating for the demon as he's speaking to him, but the demon basically says, I can give you strength, but at the cost of your life. And Bosse's like, sure. Didn't really plan on living long anyway, so sure, why not? But the other stipulation was that he can't create strength from nothing. So essentially, he has to get strength from somebody. And the thing he suggests is a sibling or somebody. And he says, well, I don't have any family. So he's like, well, create a family. So the thought of, okay, all I need to do is bear a child and I can get strength. Sure, I'll do that. Sounds good. He doesn't even hesitate. Which that was the point in which it finally dawned on me exactly what Bosse meant the moment that he kind of awakened inside of Daida and said, I've sacrificed a second child. I'm like, oh, it's going to be Bojji. But yeah, later on we'll see this scene where essentially he's out and fighting on this battlefield. He's nearly at the end of his leash and he kind of suddenly gains some strength. He starts knocking out arrows out of his body and restructuring his arm. He just gained the strength that he was seeking. And that's when he says to himself, oh, my son must have been born. Yeah, and then as he gets back to his wife, back to the homeland, that's when we see Bojji. Bojji has been born, and that explains everything. And it's just interesting because I really didn't connect the two of those. The fact that Bojji has this curse that prevents him from gaining strength is because Bosse had it. Which that kind of creates the first question I really do have, even despite getting so many answers, is my mind starts connecting the scene where Bosse dies. And the demon comes out of his body, which you would assume at that point, that was the point in which he took away Bosse's life. Probably the whole aspect of him taking Bosse's life is the fact that Bosse had a short life. So the reason why Bosse was dying, the why he had to pass on, why he had to die in general, was because the demon was taking the last bit of his life. This entire time from this backstory where he made this pact with a demon, all the way up until the point where Bojji, or the current time, and Bosse dies, that was his shortened lifespan. So the contract was completed at that point. He took his life. My thought was going to more of the typical demon thing where he takes your soul, but that really wasn't the case because technically Bosse's still alive. His soul is now within the body of Daida. His memories and everything, which makes me kind of wonder the whole idea of having to sacrifice healing. Like healing's supposed to be some part of this whole pact that he created with Miranjo. And I'm starting to wonder at this point if that requirement to kill healing is something Miranjo wanted to happen. Like Miranjo has something against healing, and this whole idea of doing this for Bosse was so that one day he would kill healing, which I don't know. It's a huge question mark. It was actually cute to finally get a scene with Bojji's mom. I think, again, we've only technically seen one scene, and that was when Bojji was first born, and we never really got to see anything besides that, but now we get to see the point in which Bosse meets her. He's seeking the strongest woman he can find to bear a child for him, and it's just kind of this scene where she's like, hey, what do you want? And he's like, oh, I just want, I want you to have my child. And she's like, why would you want to do that? I just want to be stronger. And he's like, I do too. All right, let's spar. All right, you're cool. Let's do this. Very, very quick meeting. And that was pretty much most all we see in the backstory. We did see a brief clip of when Bosse first met Bebin. Bebin was a soldier that at some point rescued the snake, which we know now is this big snake that Bojji met as well. And after seeing him, I guess, grab the snake and take it off, he decided to start training him and then assign him. So interesting to see that. It technically right after that did get to see that, yes, Bebin is still alive, which we kind of all assumed because he kind of sunk under the ground. That was the snake kind of taking him away to kind of resuscitate him and give him some sort of treatment. So it's good. Like I said, I've turned a new leaf on Bebin the moment I realized that he's not going by what Daida wanted, that he was working with Kage and everything. But yeah, just to kind of cover the rest of what happens with Bosse is obviously now he's in Daida's body. We kind of get him realizing that what's happened, and then at some point asking the mirror who the strongest person in the world is. I think he was trying to get an idea if he was now, as Daida, still the strongest. And the mirror had him do this kind of little chant, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the strongest of them all. And yet at the time, it doesn't show us. And I had the thought that it was going to be Bojji, but yeah, sure enough, we kind of find out later that yes, it was Bojji in the mirror, which both two things signifies that Bojji's still alive to the kingdom, or at least Bosse and whoever he tells, but also the fact that Bojji has gained a new strength. Now, the question mark then becomes, is it that he gained a new strength, or is the potential that's there that has always been there? Because obviously the death of Bosse didn't mean that it just transferred back to Bojji because he's been weak this entire time. What it does then signify is, again, has Desper found some way of unlocking that potential from Bojji, which at first was the draining of his strength to Bosse, but as it's kind of implying now, seems to only be a temporary thing. But again, the thing that I'm more leaning to, the why that Bojji was shown in the mirror, was it's not asking, mirror, what is the what's the ranking of King's Master right now? Because the mirror doesn't make that decision. It's the ranking of King system. So I'm wondering if the strength classification is more than just physical brute strength, and it's strength of other things. It's strength of leadership. It's strength of followers. It's a strength of personality. It's the strength of all this other stuff, not just physical strength. But based on the fact that Bojji is now cracking rocks in half, it might be something. It might be something Desper has unlocked. But like I said, I think what they're leaning more towards with Bojji is going to be technique, not brute strength. So hitting the rock just right to break it and using his agility to his advantage, not just slam the blade through the rock. But yes, following this, the mirror then says, okay, it's time to keep up your end of the bargain. It's time to kill Healing. And again, this is where I'm like, okay, what is this? Like, this is the biggest question mark of the episode, is what does Healing have to do with anything? What is her sacrifice required? Again, my theory is going to be that the mirror has some sort of relationship with Healing and doesn't like her and wants her dead. And maybe that be why possibly back some time ago, Miranjo probably had Bosse choose Healing as his second wife because, one, I think she knew at some point she was going to have to use another baby to put Bosse in, and what better person than somebody you don't like? And again, the addition to that is that she wants Healing dead. But again, the whole aspect of him being reborn inside of Daida's body might be something to do with sacrificing Healing as well. Like, there's something to retain that rebirth, and Healing is the thing. Maybe healing, they can then use her essence to heal something, or maybe some way of gaining Daida back or Bosse into his original body is requiring Healing to be dead. I don't know. That's kind of where my mind's running with all those things. It sort of makes it seem like it's a pact. Like, this is the thing that has to be done later. Not so much but it could be an aspect of her realizing that if she knew that Daida was taken over by Bosse, she's going to be a threat and she needs to get rid of him. Or that Healing has the healing capability of bringing Daida back. Because it obviously shows us at the end of the episode, Daida's still in there. He's trapped in darkness. So maybe the reason why she wants to get rid of Healing is because she knows that Healing will eventually, she can use her abilities to get Daida back. And so she's thus a threat. That's probably the theory that I think is the most probable. The interesting thing, though, is that the thing that they're employing to get rid of Healing, assassinate her, is these crazy monsters. And they're really skilled. Enough that Appius was kind of thrown off by them. And then, obviously, Daida comes up as Bosse and just hits it. But, yeah, it kind of implies with that whole scene that they needed something extremely skilled. Because the only reason he sent Appius out there was to test them. Why would he have to test random monsters? Because that makes me think that Healing is not just a really good healer. She's actually got some sort of ability or some skill to fight back. Like, she is something. She is not just, the damsel in distress, throw out heals whenever my son gets hurt. Of course, you kind of seen that when she did her super heals. She get all buff and crap and her clothes start shredding, but there's something in there, and it's piqued my interest there. But and again, at this point, I don't want something to happen to Healing, so I hope nothing happens. But yeah, later on we have a scene where obviously, Hokuro leaves Domas, says, I'm going to go tell them what happened. I got to report back to them. That's my duty. He goes back, even though Domas is like, you're dead if you do. And yeah, sure enough, the moment that he comes before healing and says, hey, look, this is all that happened, she literally wants him dead. So she actually has Hokuro not just wants Domas dead, she literally just sends Hokuro to the stake, and they're about to kill him. But then I didn't really get this. I mean, it kind of implies this idea of his conscience is getting to him, and he decides to go help Hokuro, but he goes to free him, and then that's when Domas jumps down and fights back. So at this point, Bosse tells Domas that it's him, and that he wants him to go to this entrance to the underworld that's underneath the castle. It says destroy it, but it just seems weirdly worded, because it says very much there's this entrance under the castle to the underworld. It's a place where monsters are drawn to, or called to. I have to destroy it. My assumption was that he needs to go to the underworld and destroy the underworld, which obviously probably getting rid of Bojji as long as with it. But also, it also sounds like he's implying that he just needs to destroy the entrance. It's just a very weird, really weird comment. At the same time, I don't see Domas being able to take down the entire underworld. Domas isn't that strong. But he apparently needs to train Hokuro to basically help him with it too. And it kind of implies that Domas is, happy that Bojji's still alive. He's really kind of, tearful about it, because this thing that he did, that he's regretful of, didn't necessarily happen, but hasn't redeemed himself and not redeemed himself quite yet. But yeah, that's when Bosse goes and to Dorshe and healing, and they pretty much have found out just now that Bojji's still alive because he tells everybody. But he strikes at Dorshe and then tells Dorshe something. He whispers something to him. At this point, the mirror's asking, what does he keep whispering in people's ears? Obviously, we know that he told Domas that he's Bosse and that he wants him to destroy the underworld. So I don't necessarily see that she's gonna be bothered by him telling people that he's Bosse, but I think that the underworld has something to do with her. So this is where I don't think that it's necessarily to destroy the underworld to kill Bojji, but to destroy the underworld because he knows that Miranjo doesn't want that. Like, there's something going on that I don't see Bosse being completely 100% in line with Miranjo right now. I just don't. Otherwise, why would she really be questioning what Bosse is whispering in people's ears? Obviously, whatever the two of them are doing, they're not quite in lockstep anymore. It seems like whatever Bosse is doing is out of the loop for what Miranjo thinks he's doing. But obviously, after this, we have the scene where Bosse confronts Healing and essentially tells her that, he's Bosse. So yeah, it kind of leaves us on a lot of questions, like I mentioned at the very beginning. Like, why does Healing need to die? Is she a threat to, recovering Daida back to his original body and thus kicking out Bosse? What is Domas supposed to be doing? Like I said, I technically think it's probably not destroy the entire underworld. It's probably just the entrance, which I guess is the question for Bojji. Whatever Bojji is going to be doing next, he possibly could be coming to that entrance, and maybe, possibly Bosse sees Bojji as a threat currently and wants to keep him. I still haven't really gathered exactly where we're putting Bosse and his relationship to Bojji. Obviously, in the history that we see, it looks like the moment that he finds out that Bojji was born and that he now has his strength, he settled down and wanted to give Bojji everything. So it gave us a sense that he does have a sense of fatherhood. Like, something changed in him the moment he realized he took the power from his son, and that he's seen his son finally and said, this is my son, I want to give him everything. So he created an entire country. But him now in Daida's body, the big question mark is what's going on? My theory goes into more of an idea that Bosse knows that Miranjo is dangerous, possibly wants to keep Bojji away from the kingdom at the current time. And again, so that's, I think he's trying to prevent Bojji from getting back through this entranceway. And so he's having it destroyed by Domas, because I don't see Domas being strong enough to take down the entire underworld. I don't even see him beating the guy that Bojji sparred with one of Desher's knights. I don't even see him that strong. Plus, he doesn't have his dominant hand, and most knights, when they lose their dominant hand, there goes all their strength, basically. He's talking about putting something in its place, but I don't necessarily see that being that impressive. Obviously, the next question is, what did he whisper in Dorshe's ear? Obviously, he knows that he's Bosse, so he didn't whisper that he's Bosse, because he said it right afterwards. But what is Dorshe supposed to do? We have Domas having to destroy this entrance. What is Dorshe's thing? He seems like he's going to each of the knights behind Miranjo's back and telling them each to do something that is putting something into play. Again, I think it's to lock off Bojji and possibly to protect Healing. Maybe he told Dorshe to protect Healing because these things are coming after him. Maybe he sparred with the beast to see how strong they were because he wanted to tell Dorsch about how strong they were. Maybe to know if he needs to tell Dorsch to basically take her and flee. We're in a really mysterious place right now of exactly who is Bosse, really, who he truly is. It's trying to make him out as being sinister right now that he's Daida, but I think he's playing it to offset Miranjo while he puts the pieces in place. But yes, at the very end of the episode, we did get a brief vision of Daida stuck inside of Bosse's body. We also did get to see that Bojji has finished his training with Desper, so he is now a master of Desper. I think he said something like that. So again, I'm curious, maybe the next episode we'll see where Bojji's going from here. Is he going to be traveling the underworld, looking for a place to get out, or just to discover things? I don't think that Bojji is necessarily desiring to go back to the kingdom. I mean, there's nothing really telling him he wants to. He went out on an adventure to get away from the kingdom. I don't necessarily see him, unless Kage tells him that stuff's going down back at home, we need to get back there. I don't see him necessarily rushing to go back home. But that's my thoughts on episode 8 of Ranking of Kings. Hope you guys enjoyed my impressions. If you did, leave a like down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode, subscribe if you haven't already, share this video if you can, support us on Patreon if you can. We definitely appreciate everybody that does, and y'all take care.